This is Tim Lackey. I'm building a Michalak designed AF4G, a 21-foot plywood skiff, to use in the shallow creeks of Chesapeake Bay. This is episode 4, lofting the final hull curves, cutting out the port side of the hull, and building the mirror image starboard hull. Thanks for clicking on this video, and I hope you enjoy it. It's a new day, and this new tabbing on the exterior side of this plywood panel is cured. Looks good. It's going to add a lot of strength to this joint. So the next order of business is to flip these sheets over again and then finish the lofting on the first side. That's the side where I did all the layout, the interior side of the hull. And now I have to connect many of my marks so that I can cut out the shape of the hull. I had to remark a couple of the measurements that happened to fall right on or near the seam that are now covered in fiberglass. So I just took a few minutes with the drawing, marked those out again. So this is station 6 right here. This is about where the bottom of the boat starts to curve up, at least according to my marks. And so I'm using a batten now, and I've secured it along the existing line like this. You've got to run a batten fairly far past where you're actually starting the mark in order to ensure that the curve stays fair. So it's a subtle curve, but it's definitely a curve. So I've run this batten back to about station, I think it was station 6, I said. And I've put a nail in at each of the bottom marks that I measured out before. And then I faired this by eye. Whatever the measurements say, you need a fair curve in the end. So hopefully that's what I've achieved. And even though I've brought it up as far as station 2, right here, the batten ends there, so I won't mark it any further than station 2. And then when I finish out this bottom line, I'll run it as far aft as I can, probably at least as far as station 3 right there. And that'll help ensure that this is a fair curve that sweeps up appropriately to the stem mark right here. It's a subtle curve, but it is a curve. So I discovered a little problem here. It's not a problem, it was just a mistake on my part. But this black line is temporary form 6. And this is the mark I made for the bottom right there. Bears no resemblance to the bottom mark on station 3 right here, about 5 inches further forward. There's no way it was going to go by that mark and then this one. So I pulled out a ruler and remeasured this, and I found out that I'd measured it wrong. And this is actually the mark, which is right where the batten lies. But I wanted to double check that and make sure which one of these measurements was wrong. Form 6 is right here, 41.5. What I had measured out for whatever reason was 41. The batten certainly made that very clear. Always trust your eyes. The batten is key to this process because your eye will determine a sweet curve. Measurements alone don't do that. So here's the final section up to the stem. This is the bottom of the stem. And I could have run this further past, but I wanted instead to run it as far aft as I could and make sure that this is a true continuation of that curve. Again, it hit all the marks, which is good. You have to verify by eye that this is a sweet curve. And you know, this is the bottom of a flat bottom skiff. In the scheme of curves, this is not major, but obviously we want it to be right. So I'm happy with that. I can already see, I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but the point where the curved part of this bottom runs into the flat part back there about a foot behind where my poster is. There's a hard spot there because it's a transition from flat to curve. So I might sweeten that up a little. This is the area of the bottom that I was pointing out from the bow, just aft of this bulkhead 12. You can see with this curve, I've set up the batten now from the curve I drew. And it's fine up to there, but just aft here, you can see it just comes down towards me a little bit. And then it starts to smooth out again right here. So I'm going to mark this part of it in a red pen. And it's a very tiny difference. Wouldn't have really made any difference to the boat. But I'll just show you what my eyes saw and hopefully that this will correct it. So here's the new line, the red line. And it's just slightly different. I had drawn a straight line all the way up to station 12, which is right there where it says B, because a straight edge fit between all these marks. But it just wasn't quite right in this little area. And if it's a 16th different, I'd be surprised, but it's just enough to sweeten that curve right there where the red line is. So the eye is the most important tool in this. The eye can see little inconsistencies that on a boat like this don't matter a lot. But they do matter. So you want it to be sweet. It matters for how it goes through the water. It matters for how it looks. So there we go. That's the bottom drawn out. Black mark that says C is a mark of the combing. And on this drawing, it's this mark here. It doesn't have a measurement from the top like all the other ones. It only had a measurement from the bottom. So I marked it out where I thought it would be based on the lines I marked for the bottom on either side. But it didn't look right as I was trying to get a spline just now. So I remeasured it, and 33.5 comes out at that red mark, a little bit higher. Ultimately, what I want is a fair curve from the aftermost combing mark, which is that one, and through all the main stations and up here to station 12 where it meets the deck. So I want a fair curve there, but I'd like it to approximate where it says it should be on that line. But that's not the most crucial line. We'll adjust it as needed to bring it into there. This is another place where I adjusted by eye and pulled this batten out and bent it beyond where it actually ends. This is the transition of the combing to the cabin right there. And I put a nail as close as I could to that mark, but obviously I can't get it right there. But when I bent this in, it was clear that I needed to bend it more up here to get it sweetly into this point. Because even when it was resting against this nail, it was just too straight. So I bent it out like this and held it with some weights, and that's helped me produce this curve. It's the left-hand side of that curve is where I'm going to draw. So the basic hull shape is now defined on here. These black Sharpie marks, there's the stem. And the bottom, it's got a little bit of a knuckle here at the bow. Sweeps aft roughly even with that red box of nails before it flattens out completely. And that's the bottom. And then down at this end, we've got the combing, that nice curved line up near the top edge. And that's bulkhead 12, the black line. That's the main bulkhead that defines the forward cabin versus the cockpit. I adjusted the combing. And see, it didn't run through a couple of the marks, especially that one. This is station 7. And to run it, it just didn't look right on the mark, so I adjusted it a little bit by eye, because I wanted a sweet curve all the way from the end of the combing up to this point. And to get that, this original measurement marked with the cross was actually holding that up. You can see it's maybe a 1/4 inch lower, but that ran through all the other points except this temporary form mark that I showed you before. And that's an approximation. This isn't, I mean, this is a visual curve. You know, I could make it all square if I wanted. That would be my choice. It wouldn't look the same. So obviously I didn't want to do that. But the point is, this is just the combing curve. You could really make it triangular. But this looks good. It's a nice fair curve. To me, this is a defining part of the boat, so how it looks is very important. And I carried it out just a bit past where it's going to cut off. That ensured that the curve didn't do any funny bumps right at the end. I really like that cockpit curve and the way it joins up to the kind of flat deck line at the bow. Gives it that sort of Crocker look. So this is where we ended up. Black lines are cut lines. The red line is the shear line, where the shear strake will go eventually. I think everything looks pretty good. That shear strake, I can tell I'm going to want to fare that by eye when I put it in. It's a pretty good curve. It definitely gets flat up here, these last 2 or 3 stations, but it's fair. I'm just not sure it's supposed to be that flat, and maybe when the boat is pulled together into a curve, instead of being a flat panel, that will work itself out. So for now, it's just a guideline. When I actually install the gunnel itself, I'll have an opportunity to make sure it's just so. That shear line curve is very important to the look of the boat, so we'll make sure that's just so. And this combing curve down here is also extremely important to the look of the boat, in my opinion. Kind of the key defining feature of the profile. I like what I've drawn. Honestly, it could be drawn many different ways if one so chose. This is roughly how it's shown in the drawing, but a person could choose to do that particular line differently according to their own taste. Been debating inwardly. The combing ends in a very abrupt vertical line here, and then it's a very straight line here. Been toying with the idea of leaving some extra plywood here when I cut this, so that if I feel like changing the shape of that a little, it's hard to tell. I kind of think I need to see the boat sort of put together and how it's going to look when the ends get pulled in and into their final shape. But that wouldn't be a hard thing to cut additionally later if I want to. So I haven't decided yet. I got to decide soon because I'm going to be cutting this out. I kind of like the option. I don't know. Here's the profile of the boat as designed. You can see the defining shear line and the combing. I guess that combing vertical line and the straightness of the stern just aft of it somehow doesn't seem so bad. I think maybe the pulling the boat together is going to give it a tiny sweep in the shear towards the stern. Because from this drawing, it doesn't strike me as being too square. I don't know. I don't know whether to leave that a little bit proud for later trimming or just cut it. So to get this ready to cut out the lines, I've raised it up again on some 2x4s, and that'll keep my saw clear of the floor. I'm going to start with the stem and the stern cuts, then the bottom, and then I'll cut the combing curve. The aft end of this bottom cut is pretty straight about halfway through the boat, and it takes on a subtle curve. So for the first part, I'm going to use an 8-foot straight edge and cut as far as I can with that, and then I'll freehand the rest. So the long bottom cut is done. Happy to have that done. Wasn't my favorite thing. It's not a perfect cut, I'm not going to lie. The whole thing, I freehanded the whole thing because at the aft end here that I thought was pretty straight, actually had a little bit of a shape to it after all. Had the saw set just barely deeper than the thickness of the plywood. Circular saw is a little squirrely at that kind of shallow cut. So I tried to leave the line so that I can clean this up right to the line. So I can sweeten this up a little bit before I use this as a pattern for the other side. It's tough to see the shape, but it is there. There's just a little curve. It's not a lot. So here at the aft end, I just extended a line from the end of the combing aft, that pencil line. I'm just going to cut it there. If I need to cut it down to the height of the black line later, I'll do so. This gives me some options in case I decide I want to do something different. So there's the combing cut. I ended up leaving a little extra at the stern here. The bold black line is as designed, including this vertical section right there. But this gives me options if I want to change this at all. Not sure yet. But this way, if I want to make a little angle or something there, it gives me the chance. Otherwise, I'll just cut out that little piece. So I don't intend to leave it running all the way out. But I've got the cut made. I left the line. It's going to need a little bit of subtle fairing, but it's mostly there. So I cleaned up my cut lines a little. Didn't take long, it wasn't bad. Just a few little blips and burbles along the way. I used aggressive sandpaper on a block, and if it took me 20 minutes to do it all, I'd be surprised. And now we've got a curve here that I can live with, and it's going to be good for patterning the next side. So I'm all happy with that curve on the bottom. But I'm right to the line. I just had to clean it up a little bit. I chose sandpaper and a sanding block because for me that's the easiest. And I knew it wasn't going to take much. A little round hard foam sanding block that I have that fits the 5-inch discs that I have. And I'll show you the combing. Again, there's an extra bit here. I know I keep harping on this, but that little rectangular piece will probably get cut out, but for now I've left it so I can decide how I want to terminate the combing. And then the combing line I similarly cleaned up. Just brought it to the line, fairing by eye, and that's a nice curve. I like that shape a lot. So an overall view of the cutout port side. All the cuts are made. This is the final shape. Pleased with it. Looks good. So with a square, I've just gone and transferred all of these bulkhead and layout marks to both edges. This is the bottom, and I've laid them all out on both edges so that I can transfer them to the exterior side of this. And that's the first step. That'll help me recreate these on the outside later when I need to, like for locating bulkheads. So that'll help me locate screws or whatever I need to do. Same thing on the top. Every line, every station mark, which are these pencil lines, and then every bulkhead mark. And ultimately that will also help me. I'm going to flip this. I'm going to measure the shear at every point, and then I can recreate that on the other side where I'm actually going to need it. So that was the other reason. That's a process that I'll do soon, not right now. But I just went and marked these all, just get it done. I didn't really feel like it, but they're all set and marked, and then I can use this to transfer these lines to the other side. And that'll be helpful as I lay out the bulkheads and other things as I continue to build this boat, as well as helping me relocate the shear on the outside of the hull. That's a minor fallacy here, is that shear line, the red line. It looks great, but it's on the inside. So that'll help me transfer it. I can just measure down at each reference point and refair a curve on the other side. It'll take 15 or 20 minutes. So I'll do that. I'll probably do that next time. So my next step is to join 3 more sheets of plywood together, just as I did here. It's going to take a little while, a few days. And I will trace this out and cut out the other side to match. I'm not going to bore you with too much filming of me spreading out 3 sheets of plywood. You saw all that the last time around. So this is the same thing. I'm going to lay out the 3 sheets. I'm just laying them straight on the floor this time. I don't have to do any layout on these. I'm just going to fiberglass the seams together, and that'll finish this. And then I will use the first side, the port side, to template the starboard side. So I don't have to lay out anything. I don't have to secure the sheets to the floor like I did before. So I'm going to lay them flat on the floor and weight the seams as needed so that they're flat, and then install the fiberglass tabbing. So that's the starboard side, raw panel. Now tabbed together on both seams, same as I did on the port side. These laid down pretty well, but I still needed the weight just to make sure that the seams were nice and flat. This has worked pretty well. If I were doing this again, I would definitely glue the panels together like this first and then do the layout. At the time I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to put the panels together and what I was going to do, but now that I've done this, no question that getting them all together makes sense first, then you do the layout. Just as with the port side, now I'm going to flip this panel assembly over and prepare and glass the other side. Just as with the port side, I set up my little cleats. These are 7 5/16 offset from the seam on each side. Seam in the middle, and that gives me what I need to route out the 6-inch space in the center for my tabbing. Do both seams this way. So with the starboard side now flipped back so that it's inside face, the inside of the hull is facing up. Now I can put the inside face of the cut port side on top and trace it out. So I've got the port side inside down on top of the starboard side, which is facing inside up. So both insides are together, which means we have 2 exteriors on the floor side and the exposed side. If I were to flip this whole thing up like this, it would be upside down with the port side face here facing this way, and the starboard side, again, if I flip this whole panel as it is up, then the exterior side of that that's on the floor would be facing out upside down as the starboard side of the hull. It's a mirror image copy, not an exact copy. So I'm going to trace this out and we'll cut out the starboard side. And then there's a bunch of marking steps to take care of on the starboard side so that we can lay things out. So there's the starboard side. It's all cut out. I've cleaned up the edges down to my cut marks, or my marks, I guess. The ones I copied off the port side here.